Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Liam.
And I'm Lisa. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So let me ask you, our listener, this. Ever found yourself a bit tongue-tied when someone just casually asks, so what have you been up to lately? Or maybe you've spent, years learning English in the classroom. You've absorbed all those rules, the grammar, the structure.
Right, all the textbooks.
Exactly. But then when it comes to having a real spontaneous conversation, you kind of struggle. Maybe you feel stuck with the basics.
Yeah, or that feeling of just not knowing exactly what to say. Or maybe even worse, constantly worrying, am I making a mistake? Do I sound okay?
That's it, that fear of sounding less than perfect. It's a really common hurdle, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But it's one we're really hoping to help you clear today.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into, a really rich collection of insights on how to basically breathe easy and have truly wonderful, natural conversations in English.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is how much of what we've been taught, about correct English, air quotes around correct, actually hinders real-world fluency sometimes.
Right. It's counterintuitive.
It really is. We get so caught up in the prescriptive grammar, the rigid structure, that we sometimes lose sight of how fluid and dynamic spoken language actually is. And often delightfully irregular, too.
Yeah.
So this deep dive, it isn't just about memorizing more grammar rules. It's really about shifting your mindset, your whole approach, and equipping you with some really practical tools.
That's precisely our mission today. We want to give you a shortcut, maybe, or at least a clearer path to more confident, more authentic English communication. We'll explore not only what to say, and we've got a whole treasury of everyday phrases that native speakers genuinely use, not just the textbook stuff.
Yeah, the real stuff.
The real stuff. But also how to approach learning and speaking itself. So you'll discover some, I think, surprising truths about common English rules you might have learned.
And maybe even internalize some of them in a completely new way. It's about seeing the why behind the what.
Right.
If we kind of connect this to the bigger picture, it's all about moving from simply knowing English grammar, like having it stored in your head.
The theory.
Exactly, the theory. To actively using English, using it effectively, confidently, and crucially, naturally, in pretty much any situation you find yourself in.
Which I think raises a really important question for you, the listener. What's actually holding you back from truly engaging in English conversations?
Is it that fear of making a mistake? That grammatical error fear?
Or maybe that feeling of waiting until your English feels perfect before you speak.
Which, let's be honest, might never happen if you don't start practicing.
Exactly. So we're here today to help you kind of deconstruct those barriers and really unleash your conversational potential. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's dive in.
Okay, so many of you listening have probably spent, a fair bit of time in an English classroom diligently learning the rules.
Yep. Verb conjugations, sentence structures, the whole 9 yards.
And look, rules are generally good. They give us a foundation, a critical framework.
Absolutely. You need that base.
But here's where it gets really interesting, maybe even a little controversial for some people. To speak truly fluent, natural-sounding English, well, there are actually a few rules you might need to break. Or at least understand that native speakers break them all the time.
It's about shifting from what linguists sometimes call prescriptive grammar, how language should supposedly be used according to the rules.
The idealized version.
Right, to descriptive grammar, which is simply how language is actually used by people in their daily lives.
And that gap can be pretty big sometimes.
It really can. And this whole concept of breaking rules, I get it. It can be a little unsettling if you're a rule follower. Many language learners are, naturally. You've put in the work to learn these things.
You don't want to unlearn them.
Exactly. But it's really essential if you want to move beyond that very formal, sometimes even, let's face it, archaic English.
Yeah, stuff nobody actually says anymore.
Right. To get to the vibrant, efficient language that native speakers use every single day. Think of it like moving from, reading the car manual to actually driving the car.
That's a great analogy. It's about the practical application.
It is. It's about sounding natural, flowing, not just sounding grammatically flawless like a robot.
Okay, so let's jump into the first major shift in perspective here. The first rule you might want to reconsider. 1.1, ditching whom. Embracing natural questions. Okay, imagine this scenario. Your phone rings. It's a number you don't recognize. You answer it.
Okay.
And a stranger on the other end asks, is this Liam? Or is this your name? Now, your perfectly correct classroom-taught response might be, to whom am I speaking?
Chuckles slightly. Oh, dear.
Right. Now, try saying that out loud. To whom am I speaking? In a normal, casual context, it sounds a bit, well, like you're in a period drama, doesn't it?
It really does. Or maybe like you're trying extremely hard to sound formal, almost unnaturally so. That phrase, to whom am I speaking? Well, technically grammatically correct if you follow the old rule.
Because whom is the object?
Exactly. Whom is the objective case of who, so grammatically it fits after the preposition to. But honestly, it is so rarely used in modern conversational English. You might hear it in like very old movies or maybe super formal written documents, but in speech, almost never.
It just feels out of place, stilted.
Totally. And linguistically, this distinction between who as the subject and whom as the object, it's been eroding in spoken English for, well, centuries, really.
It has. Wow.
Yeah. Native speakers, we tend to prioritize clarity and flow and ease of use. And who has just become the default versatile pronoun. It works for both subject and object in most everyday situations now.
So it's just simpler.
It's simpler, it's efficient, it's part of how the language naturally evolves to be more user-friendly, you could say.
Okay, so instead of that very formal, slightly theatrical, to whom am I speaking, what's the natural, everyday alternative?
Oh, much easier. You just ask, who's this?
Simple as that.
Simple as that. Or maybe slightly more complete. Who am I speaking with?
Ah, okay. Who am I speaking with?
Yeah. The key is just using who instead of whom. It instantly makes you sound more natural, more approachable, definitely more fluent in a conversational sense.
It's about reflecting how people actually talk.
Exactly. And here's a little extra wrinkle just to show how these rules get tangled up.
Uh-oh.
That perfectly natural phrase, who am I speaking with? Technically, it breaks another one of those traditional rules that some teachers love.
Which one?
The one about not ending a sentence with a preposition, you know, the word with at the end there.
Ah, right. I remember being told that. Never end a sentence with a preposition.
Yep. We'll dig into that one more specifically in a bit, but it just goes to show who am I speaking with is completely natural, it's widely used, it's preferred, even though it technically breaks two old school rules at once.
Wow. So the rules don't always match reality.
Not even close sometimes. Spoken language prioritizes clarity, flow, naturalness over these rigid, sometimes arbitrary constraints. It adapts for communication, not for grammar textbooks.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So ditch the whom in most cases. Got it. What's next? 1.2, the plural theirs. Accepting common contractions.
All right, rule number 2, or maybe rule we can relax. This one is about contractions and plurals.
Okay, I think I know where this might be going.
You probably do. So in class, you learned that to talk about multiple things, use there are.
Right.
There are a lot of problems with this plan.
Yep, plural subject, plural verb. Makes sense. Grammatically correct.
Totally correct. But listen carefully in fast, natural, conversational English. What are you far more likely to hear?
There's a lot of problems with this plan.
Exactly, there's a lot of problems, or there's lots of reasons, or there's 5 people waiting.
Even though problems and reasons and people are all plural.
Precisely. This is a classic example of spoken English prioritizing efficiency and ease of articulation, phonological ease.
Meaning it's just easier to say.
Yeah, basically, theirs is just quicker and smoother to say than there are. That sound often blends really easily into the next word, especially if it starts with a consonant.
Yeah.
And while technically, yes, there is problems, is incorrect grammar because problems is plural, the contraction theirs, which is short for there is, gets used with plural objects constantly in daily conversation.
So it's not necessarily seen as a mistake by native speakers.
Generally, no, not in casual speech. It's just common usage. It's a pragmatic choice for speed and convenience. The listener's brain is really good at getting the meaning from the context anyway. We know you mean multiple problems even if you say theirs. The strict plural agreement isn't always necessary for comprehension in fast talk.
Okay, so if I hear someone say, wow, there's a lot of things to do this weekend, I shouldn't mentally correct them.
Please don't. They're just speaking naturally. And honestly, if you start using theirs with plurals in casual conversation,
I'll sound more natural.
you absolutely will. It's one of those subtle markers that makes your speech feel less like it's straight out of a grammar exercise and more like genuine, flowing conversation. It shows you've picked up on the rhythms of real spoken English.
Interesting. So there's lots of examples of this.
Exactly. See? You're doing it already. Perfect. Or should I say perfectly natural.
Okay, got it. What's the next rule we can maybe bend a little? 1.3, the subjunctive shift. If I was versus if I were.
All right, next up. The subjunctive mood. Sounds fancy, right?
It does sound a bit intimidating,
Yeah.
like advanced grammar.
It can be. So you probably learned this beautiful, grammatically correct sentence structure for hypothetical situations. If I were rich, I would buy a yacht. Or if I were from France, I would speak French.
Right. Using were, even with I or he or she, to show it's unreal or hypothetical.
Exactly. That's the classic subjunctive form indicating something contrary to fact. And it's perfectly correct in formal writing or maybe very formal speech. But how often do you really hear people say, if I were, in just everyday chat?
Hmm. Thinking about it. Probably not that often. I feel like I hear something else more.
You almost certainly do. In daily, casual conversation, you are far, far more likely to hear people say, if I was rich, I'd buy a yacht, or if I was from France, I'd speak French.
Ah, okay. Using was instead of were.
Yes. This touches on that subjunctive tense, which is admittedly a more complex grammatical structure, and what happens in spoken language. Often, complex structures get simplified for ease of use, especially in spontaneous speech.
As long as the meaning is still clear.
Precisely. The context of the if clause, plus the conditional would in the second part, I would speak French, still clearly signals that we're talking about a hypothetical situation. So the stricter if I were form becomes less essential for understanding.
So if I was taller, I'd play basketball. That sounds pretty normal to me.
Sounds perfectly normal and is incredibly common. Now, there is one place where if I were is still very common, maybe even equally common as if I was.
Oh, yeah. Where's that?
It's in that specific warning phrase. I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Ah, okay. If I were you. I hear that a lot.
You do. It's kind of a fixed expression, almost.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, you can also hear, I wouldn't do that if I was you. And it's perfectly understood and definitely used. Maybe just feels a touch less formal.
So even in that common phrase, there's flexibility.
There is. The main takeaway here is, don't feel like you always have to use if I were in hypothetical sentences to be correct in conversation. If I was is often the more natural common choice.
That's good to know. It simplifies things a bit.
It does, and it really brings up that important question for you, the listener, to think about again. Are you clinging to strict, maybe slightly old-fashioned grammar rules that actually make your speech sound a bit unnatural?
Yeah, like you're trying too hard, almost.
Yeah. Exactly. Sometimes embracing the common usage, even if it technically deviates from the old textbook rule, is more important for achieving that goal of sounding fluent and engaging naturally in conversations. It helps you blend in, linguistically speaking.
Shedding that textbook sound.
That's the goal. Okay, ready for another simplification?
Let's hear it. 1.4, streamlining verb tenses. From had thought to thought.
Okay, this one involves verb tenses, specifically the past perfect. Remember that one?
Vaguely. Isn't that the had done tense? Like something that happened before something else in the past.
Exactly. You nailed it. So a grammatically precise sentence using the past perfect might be, before I started learning English, I had thought it was impossible.
Okay, so the thinking had thought happened before the started learning. It clearly sequences the events.
Perfectly correct. Very clear sequencing. Useful in writing, especially to avoid ambiguity. But again, what happens in everyday conversation, we often streamline.
We simplify. So how would that sentence sound more casual?
Much more likely you'd just hear, before I started learning English, I thought it was impossible.
Just using the simple past tense, thought.
Yep. The simpler past tense is far more commonly used in spoken English in these situations. It shows this general tendency we have to simplify complex verb tenses when the meaning is still clear from the context.
So because you said before I started, the sequence is already obvious, so you don't strictly need the had thought.
You got it. The listener's brain is pretty efficient. If the order of events is clear from other words like before, after, when, or just the order you say things, native speakers will often default to the simpler tense. Why use a more complex tool when a simpler one does the job?
It's about minimizing effort, maybe? Cognitive load.
That's a great way to put it. Minimizing cognitive load for both the speaker who has to retrieve the more complex form and the listener who has to process it, all in real-time conversation.
Okay, so this is actually good news for learners, right?
I think it's fantastic news. It means you don't always have to stress about reaching for the most complicated tense, like the past perfect or past perfect continuous, to sound correct or sophisticated.
Sometimes the simpler past tense is not only okay, it's actually more common and natural in daily life.
Exactly. Using I thought instead of I had thought in that example sentence makes you sound instantly more conversational, less like you're reciting a grammar rule. It reduces that mental burden, frees you up to focus on what you want to say.
Less hesitation, more flow.
That's the idea. Okay, one more big rule to tackle in this section, and it's a classic.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. 1.5 prepositions at the end. The myth debunked and a joke.
This one. Oh boy. This is a rule that gets drilled into people, even native speakers, from a very young age in school.
Okay, lay it on me.
Never end a sentence with a preposition.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I definitely remember that one. Like, you shouldn't say, who did you give it to? You should say, to whom did you give it?
Exactly. Or instead of, which car do you want to go in? Yeah, you're supposed to say,
Yeah.
In which car do you want to go?
Yeah. In which car do you want to go? Saying it like that, it sounds quite odd, doesn't it? Really stilted.
It sounds incredibly unnatural in most contexts. This so-called rule about avoiding prepositions at the end of sentences, well, it's frequently taught, often very rigidly. But the truth is, it's largely an artificial constraint.
Artificial. Where did it come from then?
Well, the short story is that some grammarians, like centuries ago, tried to impose rules from Latin grammar onto English. And in Latin, you generally don't end sentences with prepositions.
But English isn't Latin.
Precisely. English has a different structure, a Germanic structure largely, and ending sentences with prepositions is actually a very natural and common feature of the language. In modern English, it's not just common, it's used all the time.
In casual speech, obviously, but what about more formal situations?
Even in more formal contexts, you find it in academic writing, in business communication. Trying too hard to avoid ending with a preposition often makes your writing or speech sound overly formal, awkward, and just unnatural. It creates what linguists sometimes call unidiomatic phrasing. It just doesn't sound right.
So how do people really speak? Let's go back to that car example.
Simple. Which car do you want to go in?
Sounds instantly better. More normal.
Right. Or instead of, with whom are you speaking? Which we already discussed with whom.
You say, who are you speaking with?
Exactly. Or, where are you from? Not from where are you? Which just sounds weird.
Okay, so it's not sloppy English to end with a preposition.
Not at all. It's standard, natural, idiomatic English. It's how the language works and has evolved. Trying to rigidly avoid it is what actually sounds strange.
It's funny how a rule can make things sound less correct in a way.
It really is. It shows how imposing artificial rules can hinder clear, natural communication. And there's a famous anecdote, or maybe it's just a joke, often attributed to Winston Churchill that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, tell me.
Okay, so the story goes, a rather pompous, rule-obsessed person critiqued Churchill for ending a sentence with a preposition. Churchill supposedly retorted, "This is the sort of English up with which I will not put."
Up with which I will not put.
That's brilliant!
It sounds completely ridiculous trying to avoid the preposition at the end.
Exactly. It perfectly shows the absurdity of contorting sentences just to avoid ending with a preposition like with or up. And there's another, maybe simpler joke. A new student arrives at Harvard, asks a classmate, "Where are you from?" The snobby classmate replies, "Where I'm from, we know not to end a sentence with the preposition."
Oh, dear. And the new student says,
Quick as a flash, the new student says, "Oh, sorry, where are you from, stupid?"
Laphis.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes the point very clearly. Where are you from is perfectly fine.
It's perfectly fine, perfectly natural. The attempt to enforce the artificial rule just makes the person sound pretentious, not smarter.
So the big takeaway from all these examples, what does it all mean for someone learning English?
It means don't let these outdated or overly rigid prescriptive rules stop you from sounding like a natural English speaker. Trust your ear sometimes. Listen to how native speakers actually talk.
Embrace the flexibility.
Exactly. Focus on clear communication and what is commonly understood and used. Getting comfortable with these broken rules is actually foundational to building real conversational confidence and fluency.
Okay, this is really liberating, actually. Knowing you don't have to be a walking grammar textbook all the time.
That's the spirit. Now, shall we move on to actually what to say in these conversations?
Absolutely. Let's get practical.
Okay.
So we've just talked about how native speakers often speak, bending or breaking some of those rules you might have learned, feeling a bit more liberated, hopefully.
Hopefully. Less constrained by the textbook.
Right. So now let's equip you with the actual words and phrases you need to have those natural conversations. We're not just going to list vocabulary. We're diving into practical, everyday questions and answers.
Yeah, the kind of stuff that will make you feel genuinely prepared for, well, pretty much any common social situation. And crucially, understanding the intention behind these phrases and how you can adapt them.
It's not just about memorization, is it?
Definitely not. Rote memorization of isolated phrases isn't that useful. It's about understanding the context, the typical responses, and the conversational strategies these phrases unlock. Think of it like building a toolkit for real-time interactions.
You can actively participate, not just listen.
Exactly. You're building a repertoire, a set of tools you can grab when you need them.
Beyond how are you? Building initial connections.
Okay, first things first, starting the conversation. This can often feel like the trickiest part, right? That initial exchange sets the whole tone.
It really does. There's that little bit of pressure.
And while how are you is perfectly fine, totally correct. Let's be honest, sometimes it can feel a bit robotic. Or maybe too formal in really casual settings.
Yeah, it can sometimes lead to a very short answer like, fine, thanks, you, and then silence.
Right. Awkward silence. So let's explore some common alternatives that maybe invite a bit more connection or a slightly longer response.
And what's really key here is recognizing the subtle differences, the nuances. Some greetings are super casual, some might show a bit more concern, others are just open-ended conversation starters.
Understanding the register, you mean, like who you're talking to.
Exactly. The register, the context. Choosing the right greeting shows you're paying attention, that you're socially aware. It helps you pick the right tool for the job, whether it's a close friend or someone you just met.
Okay, so give us some examples beyond how are you? Host speaker. How about how's your day going? Expert speaker. Oh, that's a great one. Very common, friendly, open-ended. It invites a little summary. A typical response might be, pretty good, thanks. Bit busy, but can't complain. How about yours? Host speaker. Nice. It opens the door a bit wider than just fine. Expert speaker. Yeah. Or if it's been hectic, oh, it's been a whirlwind, but getting things done. What about you? See? More engaging. Host speaker. Okay, what about you been doing okay? That sounds a bit different. Expert speaker. It does. This one often carries a slight note of concern. Maybe you use it if someone looks a bit tired, or if you haven't seen them in a while and you're genuinely checking in on their well-being. Host speaker. So it's a bit more personal. Expert speaker. Can be, yeah. A response might be, it's been kind of a hard week, actually, but it's getting better. Thanks for asking. Or just, yeah, I'm okay. Just a bit tired today. It shows you notice them. You care. Host speaker. And the super casual contraction. How you been? Expert speaker. Yeah, short for, how have you been? Definitely use this with people you know reasonably well. It's informal.
Sure.
Host speaker. And the response, expert speaker. Could be anything. I've been good, really busy lately, though. Haven't seen you in ages. What have you been up to? Notice how that flips it back and invites the other person to share. Keeps the ball rolling. Host speaker. Okay, I like this one. What's new with you? Expert speaker. This one explicitly asks for updates. Recent life events, hobbies, anything significant. It's a signal you want to move beyond just pleasantries. Host speaker. So you might get a longer answer. Expert speaker, you might. Like, oh, so much. We just had our third baby last month, so life's been pretty crazy, but wonderful. My family's so excited. Or maybe not much on my end, just same old, same old. What about you? Still invites reciprocity. Host speaker. Is what's new in your world basically the same? Expert speaker. Pretty much. Maybe sounds a tiny bit more expansive, a little more whimsical. But yeah, same idea. Asking for a general life update. Well, we have a newborn, so everything's new, getting adjusted. Host speaker. How about what's been going on? Expert speaker. Similar again. Asks for recent updates, implying maybe some activity or developments have happened since you last spoke. Oh, you know, getting the kids ready for school, planning our summer trip, just busy. Host speaker. And the classic, how's it going? Expert speaker. Ha! The workhorse. Extremely common, super versatile, fits almost any casual context, works for friends, colleagues, acquaintances. Host speaker. But the response can be tricky, right? I've heard people just say, it's going. Expert speaker. Yes, that's a really important one to recognize. It's going is often a concise, maybe slightly non-committal response. It can mean things are okay, chugging along, but maybe not fantastic, or maybe they're just having a tough week and don't want to elaborate. It's polite but brief. Host speaker. So if someone says that, maybe don't pry too much. Expert speaker. Probably a good idea, yeah. Or you could get a more positive, it's going well, thanks, just wrapping up work for the day. Host speaker. And what's up? Expert speaker. Highly casual. Definitely more for friends or peers. Sometimes it's barely even a question, just a quick acknowledgement like saying, hi, host speaker. So the answer might be short too. Expert speaker. Often, yeah. Not much. Just heading home. What about you? Or, hey, Nothing much, just grabbing coffee, quick and easy. Host speaker. What about how's everything or how's everything going? Expert speaker. That feels a bit broader, doesn't it? Like inquiring about their general well-being, circumstances, work, family, life in general. Host speaker. So a more encompassing question? Expert speaker? Yeah, pretty good. We've had a busy summer traveling, but good busy, you know.
Yep.
Ready for the fall now.
Oh.
Host speaker. And lastly, hey, you doing all right? Expert speaker. This one, like, you've been doing okay. Us often signals a bit of concern. It's great for checking on someone who maybe looks a bit unwell or tired or just seems down. Especially good for a friend. Maybe less so for a coworker you don't know well. Could feel a bit intrusive then. Host speaker. So it shows empathy.
Yeah.
Expert speaker. Exactly. And the response might be, yeah, I'm okay. Just feeling a little under the weather today. Probably need some rest. Okay, so that's a great range. The key thing you're saying isn't just memorizing these, but understanding the feel of each one.
Precisely. What level of formality are you showing concern? Are you asking for a real update? Choosing the right opener sets the stage for a much more natural flowing conversation from the get-go.
Makes sense. So we've greeted someone. What's often next? Plans.
Plans are a very common topic. Let's talk about that. 2.2 Discussing. Discussing plans, making connections and invitations.
Right, so you've broken the ice, you've said hello, what's a natural follow-up? Often, yeah, it's talking about plans, what you're doing today, this weekend, next vacation.
Absolutely. It's how we connect, find common ground, make arrangements, or just show simple interest in someone else's life. It's super versatile.
And this section isn't just about answering questions about your plans, is it?
No, it's also about how you can use these questions proactively to maybe suggest something, extend an invitation, or even politely decline an invitation while keeping the door open for later.
So it's about participation, negotiation almost.
Exactly. Opening those conversational doors, not just exchanging information like robots.
Okay, let's run through some common plan-related questions and natural responses. Host speaker, the everyday classic. What are you up to today? Or even more casual, what are you up to today? Expert speaker, such a workhorse question. Response could be detailed. Well, I kind of have a busy day ahead. Need to finish these reports this morning, run some errands this afternoon, then pick up the kids. Host speaker, or it could be simple. Expert speaker, totally. Not much, just taking it easy today. Maybe read a book. Both are fine. Host speaker. How about a direct invitation? Do you want to hang out later? Expert speaker. Nice and clear. Response. Yeah, I'd love to. Let me just check my schedule. Depends. If I can get this work finished by, say, 5 p.m, then yes, definitely. Host speaker. Notice the conditional phrase. If I can get this work finished. That sounds very natural. Expert speaker. Very common and polite way to express conditional availability. It's not a hard no, but it sets a condition. Or just, yeah, sounds great. What time? Host speaker. Asking about leisure. You doing anything fun this weekend? Expert speaker. Broad question invites sharing about enjoyable plans. Yeah, actually, we're going to get together with some family visiting from out of town. Should be a fun reunion. Host speaker. Or maybe less definite. Expert speaker. Sure. Hoping to. Haven't made solid plans yet, but maybe go for a hike if the weather's nice. Host speaker. Is you got anything fun planned? Similar. Expert speaker. Yep. Pretty much the same, maybe slightly more informal. You bet. Big surprise party for my friend Saturday night. All hands on deck for planning. Host speaker. Another direct invitation. Want to grab lunch later. Expert speaker. Yeah. Simple, informal. Now the response could be interesting. Instead of just yes or no, host speaker. You could make a counter suggestion. Expert speaker. Exactly. Actually, I was just about to make a big salad with stuff from the garden. Want to join me here instead? Yeah. This is great. It redirects the plan to something that suits you, potentially creating a new shared plan. Host speaker, I like that. Collaborative planning. Expert speaker. Or just, oh, I'd love to, but I brought my lunch today. Maybe tomorrow. Polite decline with future possibility. Host speaker. What if you see someone leaving? Where are you headed? Expert speaker. Quick, casual check-in. Oh, just popping out to the library and then maybe the farmer's market. Want to tag along. It's a beautiful day for it. See? Turns into an invitation. Host speaker. Nice. Host speaker. Another casual weekend one. What you got going on this weekend? Expert speaker, super informal version. Well, we're planning a big family hike, weather permitting. Supposed to be fantastic. Really looking forward to getting outdoors. Host speaker. Within a household, what are your plans for dinner? Expert speaker. Very common. I don't really have any specific plans yet. Do you? I was thinking maybe tacos. Turning the question back, inviting input. Host speaker. Collaborative again. Good. Host speaker. Okay, this one's useful. Are you going to be around later? Why ask this? Expert speaker. This is great for when you don't have time to talk right now, but you have something you want to share or discuss later. You're checking their general availability without launching into the topic immediately. Host speaker. So it's like, can I catch you later when things are less busy? Expert speaker. Exactly. Response. Yeah, should be. Give me a call around 7 tonight. I should be free then. Or, I'll be in and out, but shoot me a text later and we can connect. Host speaker. And asking about bigger plans. Have you decided where you're going on vacation? Expert speaker. More specific, future-oriented. Yeah, I think we finally settled on a road trip, going to visit some old friends, and then maybe hit the beach for a few days. We're so excited. Okay, so when talking about plans, it's really a dynamic thing. It's about sharing, inviting, maybe negotiating times or activities.
Absolutely. These phrases aren't just questions, they're conversational doorways. How you answer, or what follow-up question you ask, determines where the conversation goes next.
Right, from plans to maybe finding out more about the person, hobbies and interests.
Perfect transition. Let's talk about that. 2.3, exploring interests and hobbies. Finding common ground.
Okay, so we've done greetings, we've maybe talked about plans. How do we move beyond that small talk and really get to know someone? Or share a bit about ourselves in an engaging way?
Hobbies and interests. This is such a fantastic area for conversation because it's where you find common ground, discover shared passions, maybe learn something completely new. It makes the connection feel more genuine.
This is where conversations start to get really meaningful, I think.
I agree. And the key here often lies in asking good, open-ended questions. Questions that invite more than just a yes or no.
Questions that encourage storytelling.
Exactly. Sharing personal experiences, talking about what excites them. This is how you move from just exchanging information to building real rapport and making the conversation memorable.
Okay, let's explore some questions and responses for diving into interests and hobbies. Host speaker, the straightforward one. What do you like to do in your free time? Expert speaker. Can't go wrong with that. Clear, universally understood. Well, I really enjoy making jewelry out of recycled stuff, actually. I sell it at local craft shows sometimes. It's kind of my passion project. Host speaker, nice. And a natural follow-up would be expert speaker. How long have you done that? Shows you're interested. Oh, just started a couple years ago, really. Picked it up during the pandemic lockdowns and just kind of stuck with it. Host speaker. Ooh, I really like this follow-up. What got you into that? Expert speaker. Isn't that a great one? It really invites a story, the motivation behind the hobby. Adds depth. Well, I've always liked being creative, you know, and I also feel pretty strongly about reducing waste where I can, so it just felt like a perfect fit. Host speaker. What if they're doing the hobby right then? Maybe you want to try? Expert speaker. Yeah, that's an offer to share the experience. Now, the response could be, oh, wow, thanks. I don't have much time right now, but maybe next time you're doing it, I'd love to learn. Polite way to defer but show interest. Host speaker. A more casual way to ask. What are you into? Expert speaker. Very casual, broad. Covers hobbies, passions, general interests. Oh man, I love being outdoors. Anything involving nature, really. So I'm into hiking, gardening, kayaking. If it's outside, I'm usually game. Host speaker. Okay, someone says they're into hiking in bad weather. A great follow-up. What's that like? Expert speaker. Fantastic question. It invites vivid description, personal feeling, encourages them to paint a picture. Oh, it's intense. Hiking in the rain, you have to be pretty tough, but honestly, it feels amazing. So invigorating. You feel courageous, connected to nature. I find it personally pretty exciting. Host speaker. If someone mentions a skill, like gardening, how'd you learn that? Expert speaker. Excellent question. Uncovers their learning journey. Well, honestly, I learned a ton about gardening just from watching YouTube videos, seriously. But also, a lot of it is just trial and error, you know? Getting your hands dirty and seeing what actually works in my soil. Host speaker. What about shared interests like movies or books? Expert speaker. Super common and easy way to connect. Have you seen the latest Batman movie? Or have you read that book, Atomic Habits? Host speaker. Easy conversation starters. Expert speaker. Totally. Response for Batman. Not yet. Heard it's pretty good, though, maybe a bit darker. What did you think? Response for Atomic Habits. No, but it's on my to-read list. Is it worth it? Would you recommend it? See how they invite opinion. Host speaker. And if you want to learn something from them, I think I want to learn piano. Can you teach me? Expert speaker. A direct request showing interest in their skill. Wow, really? Sure, I'd be happy to show you the basics. I love teaching people. What makes you want to learn? Turning it back, engaging further. So the real trick here, it seems, is not just asking the first question, but asking those follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Asking questions that show you're genuinely curious, and then actively listening to the answers so you can ask another relevant question. That's how you build depth and connection. It's a dance.
Moving beyond just ticking boxes to having a real exchange.
Exactly. Okay, should we get even more practical? Like really practical. questions around the house.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's do it. The everyday stuff. 2.4 around the house, everyday interactions. All right, let's bring it right home, literally. What about those questions you ask and hear constantly in your own house or maybe with roommates or close family you live with?
Yeah, the real bread and butter interactions of daily life, the little phrases that keep things running, coordinate tasks, find lost keys.
The mundane but essential stuff.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how these seemingly simple questions actually reflect the whole dynamic of the household collaboration, shared responsibility, maybe sometimes a bit of negotiation.
Finding lost things is a big part of my household dynamic.
Tell me about it. Mastering these phrases means you can just seamlessly participate in that everyday flow. It's the fabric of domestic conversation.
Okay, let's hear some examples that will probably sound very familiar to listeners. Host speaker. Simple request. Can you help me with something? Expert speaker. Super common. Response. Sure, absolutely. Just give me 1 second to finish this email and I'll be right there. Polite acknowledgement and time frame. Host speaker. The eternal question. Have you seen my jacket? Or keys or phone? Expert speaker. Oh yes, response. Your jacket. I think I saw it on the back of the kitchen chair earlier. Did you check there? Offering a helpful suggestion. Host speaker. The follow-up suggestion. Did you check the closet? Expert speaker. Often said with a slight hint of, are you sure you looked properly? Response. Yeah, I did check the closet and the laundry basket, but I still can't find my running shoes anywhere. Showing you did make an effort. Host speaker. At the dinner table, can you pass me the salt and pepper? Expert speaker. Frequent request. Response. Sure, here you go. Need anything else while I'm at it? Simple courtesy. Host speaker. Daily task check. Did you check the mail today? Expert speaker. Routine question. Yep, just got it a few minutes ago. Looks like mostly junk mail, but maybe that package you ordered arrived. Sharing information. Host speaker. Pet care check. Have you fed the cats yet? Or dogs? Fish? Hamster? Expert speaker. Important household chore. Actually, I watched while the kids did it this morning. They did a great job remembering the right amount this time. Sharing responsibility. Host speaker. The hunger question. Is it time for dinner? Expert speaker. Usually ask when someone's stomach is rumbling. Well, it's a little early, maybe by about an hour. But you know what? I'm hungry too. Let's just eat now. Enthusiastic agreement. Host speaker. Chore negotiation. Would you rather fold laundry or put away the dishes? Because both need doing. Expert speaker. The classic household dilemma. Oof. Tough choice. Okay, I'd rather fold the laundry, I guess, if you'll tackle the dishes. I just hate putting dishes away. A fair trade, explaining the preference. Host speaker. The avoidance question, often from kids. Do I have to? Expert speaker. Chuckles. Yes, often delivered with a whine. Useful to recognize. Sometimes adults use it playfully, too. Response. I know, chores aren't fun, but yes, you do have to. Team effort, remember. Gentle but firm. Host speaker. Casual request for lights. Will you hit the light? Expert speaker. Very informal way to ask someone to turn a light on or off. Usually used when you're comfortable with the person. Response. Yeah, in just a sec. Let me just finish reading this paragraph first, then I'll get it. Acknowledging but slightly delaying. These are so simple, but they really are the sounds of a home, aren't they?
They really are. And being comfortable with them just makes daily life smoother, more collaborative, less effortful. You're participating naturally.
Okay, one more big area of life where conversation is key. Work.
Ah, yes, the professional sphere. Let's talk jobs and work. 2.5 job and work. Professional and casual contexts.
All right, last major category for these practical phrases, the workplace. Or maybe talking about your studies if you're a student. Conversations here can be tricky, right? They range from quite formal project updates to just casual chat by the coffee machine.
Exactly. And having some go-to phrases can make a huge difference in navigating that range smoothly. It helps you build rapport, understand what's going on, network effectively, and just generally feel more comfortable in your professional environment.
And it's not just about formal meetings or job interviews, is it?
Not at all. These questions are crucial for building those everyday professional relationships, fostering a good team atmosphere, knowing how to talk about your work casually, ask what others are doing, share your experiences. It's invaluable. It's part of being a good colleague or connection.
Okay, let's dive into some useful work-related questions and answers, covering both casual and slightly more formal contexts. Host speaker. Checking in on progress. How's the project going? Expert speaker. Essential question in many workplaces. Response. It's going pretty well, actually. The team's working really well together, and I think we're definitely on track to hit the deadline. Might even finish a bit early. Fingers crossed. Positive and informative. Host speaker. Injecting some casual interest. Are you working on anything fun or anything interesting? Expert speaker. Nice way to ask about their work with a focus on engagement. Well, fun might be a strong word for the budget reports. But seriously, there's nothing super exciting right now, but we're about to kick off a big new client project next week that looks really promising. Honest but forward-looking. Host speaker. Foundational questions for new people. What do you do? Or if they're studying, what are you studying? Expert speaker. Basic but crucial for understanding someone's role or field. I'm a software developer, mainly working on mobile apps. Or I'm studying mechanical engineering, hoping to get into renewable energy. Clear and concise. Host speaker. A fun icebreaker, maybe. What's your dream job? Expert speaker. Can be interesting. Encourages thinking beyond the current role. Dream job. Good question. I don't know about one specific job, but I really love working with people and helping them solve problems. So maybe something involving consulting or coaching in the future. Reflective answer, host speaker. Networking or job searching. I'm looking for a job. Is your company hiring? Expert speaker. Direct but very common when networking. Response. Oh, that's great you're looking. I'm not sure about specific openings right at this moment, but I can definitely ask around in my department. Feel free to send me your resume and I'll keep an eye out. Helpful and supportive. Host speaker. Asking about background. What kind of work experience do you have? Expert speaker. Standard question, professional settings. Well, my background is mostly in marketing and communications. I've spent the last 5 years focused specifically on digital marketing strategies for tech startups. Specific and relevant. Host speaker. Focusing on the positive. What's your favorite part about your job? Expert speaker. Encourages positive reflection, good for rapport. Honestly, my favorite part is the problem-solving aspect. I love digging into a complex challenge and figuring out a creative solution with the team. Host speaker. And the flip side, use with care. What's your least favorite part of your job? Expert speaker. Can build camaraderie if shared appropriately, maybe with colleagues you know well. Definitely the endless meetings that could have been emails and maybe filling out timesheets. Relatable complaints. Host speaker. Another lighthearted icebreaker. Would you rather do manual labor or have a desk job? Expert speaker. Gets people talking about preferences. Oh, definitely a desk job for me. Manual labor looks way too hard, especially in the winter, though I do wish desk jobs involve less sitting. Common dilemma. Host speaker. Asking about time and field. How long have you worked in education? Or tech or healthcare? Expert speaker. Specific question about tenure. Wow, let me think. Technically, I've been in education for about 15 years now, started in a classroom, but I've been doing the specific online teaching role for the last 10. Time flies. Reflective and provides context. So again, a really useful set of tools for navigating those work conversations, from the super casual to the slightly more focused.
Exactly. And remember, building rapport is often just as important as discussing the work itself in many professional settings. These questions help you do both.
Okay, we've covered breaking rules and practical phrases. What's the final piece of the puzzle for great conversations?
It's about how you learn effectively and avoiding the common pitfalls that waste your time. Let's get into that.
All right, so you're hopefully feeling a bit more confident now. You know some rules, you can relax, you're armed with a bunch of common, natural phrases.
You've got the tools.
You got the tools. But now, let's pivot slightly and talk about the process of learning itself. Because honestly, even with the best intentions, you might be unintentionally wasting valuable time without even realizing it.
It's crucial to examine not just what you're learning, but how you're learning it. Are your strategies actually effective for long-term retention, for building real confidence, for achieving genuine fluency?
Or are you just spinning your wheels on things that don't really move the needle?
Exactly. So let's unmask some of those common time wasters in language learning, and more importantly, talk about the solutions. 3.1 Time Waster 1. Learning without a plan.
Okay, number 1, and this applies to learning pretty much anything new, not just English. Learning without a plan.
Oh, this is a big one. The scattergun approach.
Totally. Just randomly picking up, a few vocabulary words from an app today, watching a random grammar video tomorrow, maybe trying a phrasal verb list next week.
And then forgetting most of it because there's no connection, no structure.
Exactly. You're just spinning your wheels. There's no consistent cumulative progress. It's like trying to build a house by just, throwing bricks randomly into a pile.
It's fragmented. Your efforts aren't building on each other. Language learning isn't just collecting items. It's building a complex, interconnected system. You need a blueprint, some kind of structure, even a simple one.
Without that direction, your learning just isn't targeted or efficient. You might learn bits and pieces, but they don't link together to form a functional skill you can actually use.
Right, you need that coherence.
So what's the solution? It sounds simple, but maybe it's hard in practice.
The solution is simple in concept. Make a plan. Even if you feel overwhelmed or don't know exactly where to start, just defining some goals and outlining some steps is infinitely better than drifting randomly.
Start small, maybe?
Absolutely. Think SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So instead of a vague goal like, I want to speak English better.
Which is impossible to measure.
Right. Try something specific like, I will learn and practice 5 new phrases related to hobbies each week for the next month, or I will have one 15-minute conversation with my language partner every Wednesday.
Okay, that feels much more concrete, actionable.
It is. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single, planned step. Consistency, driven by a plan, is the engine of progress. Even a bad plan is often better than no plan.
Good advice. Okay, time waster number 2. 3.2, time waster 2, memorizing instead of truly learning.
This takes us back to school days for many people. Time waster number 2, focusing on rate memorization instead of true learning.
Right, like cramming for a test. You memorize the facts, the dates, the vocabulary list.
You ace the test.
And then 2 days later, poof, it's gone. You can't recall it.
Exactly. That kind of superficial, short-term memorization is incredibly unhelpful for learning a dynamic skill, like a language. You don't just need to recall the word bathroom. You need to know how and when to ask, where's the bathroom, naturally.
So what's the difference between memorizing and truly learning?
True learning means internalizing information so deeply that you don't just recall it, you understand it. You can apply it flexibly, spontaneously, correctly, in different situations you haven't specifically practiced. It's about making connections.
How does that work in the brain?
Well, think about meaningful encoding. When you just memorize a word list, it's like putting files loosely on your computer desktop. When you truly learn, understanding the context, the usage, the why, it's like creating folders, subfolders, links between files. It builds a rich, interconnected network.
So the information is easier to find and use when you need it.
Precisely. Techniques like active recall testing yourself, instead of just rereading or spaced repetition reviewing information at increasing intervals, are far more effective for long-term retention than just cramming. They force your brain to retrieve the information, strengthening those connections each time.
Okay, so how do we apply this to learning phrases or rules? You mentioned context earlier.
Context is king. The absolute best way to learn, not just memorize, is to encounter and use language in context. See that new phrase used in a movie scene, hear it in a podcast conversation. Understand why someone chose that specific phrase in that situation.
And then try to use it yourself.
Yes, actively use it. Put it in a sentence about your own life. Maybe find a few more examples online. Create flashcards that have a full sentence and maybe even a little image, not just the word and its translation. It's about building that mental library of usable language patterns, not just isolated words.
So context and active use beat rote memorization every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes a bit more effort up front, but the long-term payoff in retention and usability is massive.
Makes sense. What's the next pitfall? 3.3, time waster 3. Not taking notes or using worksheets. Okay, this next one might seem almost too simple, or maybe old-fashioned in our super digital world. Time waster number 3. Not taking notes or using structured materials like worksheets.
It does sound basic, doesn't it? But the power of physically writing things down is actually backed by a surprising amount of scientific research.
Really? Like pen and paper notes are better than typing?
Studies consistently show that the physical act of writing by hand, that kinesthetic connection, helps to encode information more deeply in your brain compared to just passively listening or even typing.
Why is that?
Well, when you write by hand, you tend to process the information more deeply. You have to summarize, paraphrase, structure the ideas yourself. Rather than just typing verbatim, it forces a different kind of engagement.
So it's not just about having the notes to look back on later.
That's part of it. But the primary benefit comes from the act of writing itself. Even if you never look at those notes again, though reviewing them is obviously helpful too, the process of creating them helps solidify the information in your memory.
So it's about active engagement versus passive consumption.
Exactly. Passively watching a lesson or listening to a podcast allows information to wash over you. Actively taking notes, summarizing key points, writing down examples that forces your brain to grapple with the material, to process it, to make it your own.
It's like creating your own personalized map of the language.
That's a perfect analogy. You're actively constructing your understanding.
So the practical advice here is,
grab a notebook, dedicate it to your English learning, or use structured worksheets if they come with your lessons. Even digital note-taking is way better than nothing, as long as you're actively processing, summarizing, and writing things down in your own words.
When you hear a new phrase you like, or a rule explanations clicks, jot it down.
Yes. Write it down. Write an example sentence that's meaningful to you. This simple habit makes the knowledge stick. It prevents that frustrating feeling of learning something one day and completely forgetting it the next. It builds that solid foundation.
Okay, simple but powerful.
Huge, because active speaking, making those mistakes, getting feedback, even if it's just self-feedback when you notice something sounds off, and then self-correcting that's universally seen as the fastest, most effective way to gain fluency, perfectionism stops that process dead in its tracks.
You stay stuck in the theory in your head and never get to the messy practice.
Precisely. It's a massive waste of your time and potential.
So what's the antidote? How do you overcome that perfectionist tendency?
The key is to start small. Really small. You absolutely do not need to aim for giving a perfect, fluent presentation tomorrow. That's overwhelming.
Okay, so what's a small step?
Just take a simple low-pressure step. Maybe just describe things you see around your room out loud to yourself. I see a computer monitor. I see a green plant. The birds outside are chirping.
And if you don't know a word?
Look it up. Write it down using our previous tip. And then immediately try to use it in another simple sentence. The goal is to create a safe, judgment-free zone for yourself where mistakes are not only allowed, but expected.
Viewing mistakes as learning opportunities, not failures.
Exactly. Each mistake is just data. It tells you what you need to work on. It's not a reflection of your intelligence or your worth. Making mistakes in a safe space is actually crucial for building real, lasting confidence.
So embrace the imperfection.
Absolutely. It's an inevitable and honestly incredibly valuable part of the process. The initial goal isn't perfect, accent-free grammar. It's clear communication. Fluency comes through thousands of attempts, many of them imperfect. Forgive yourself, learn from the error, and just keep going. Speak before you feel ready.
Speak before you feel ready. I like that. Okay, leads nicely into the final time waster. 3.5, time waster 5. Waiting until your English is good enough to speak.
That's the final big one. Time waster number 5, waiting. Waiting until you feel your English is good enough, or maybe even perfect, before you actually start using it in real conversations.
This sounds very related to perfectionism.
It is. They're close cousins. But this is specifically about delaying the act of speaking itself. Many learners think, I need to study more grammar first, or I need more vocabulary, or my pronunciation isn't ready yet.
So they consume passively reading, listening, studying rules, but they don't actively produce speech in conversation.
Exactly. Maybe you repeated set phrases in class, like my name is,
Yeah.
or where's the library. But that's not the same as spontaneous conversation, is it? Constructing your own thoughts in real time, responding to unexpected questions.
That's a whole different skill.
It's a completely different skill, and it's a skill that only improves with practice. Now, here's the thing. If you, our listener, can understand this detailed deep dive we're having right now.
Following along with the nuances, the vocabulary.
Right. If you can comprehend these complex ideas, your English level is almost certainly high enough to start having meaningful conversations. Your receptive skills, listening, reading, are clearly strong.
So the gap isn't usually knowledge, it's confidence or practice.
Often, yes. It's about activating all that passive knowledge you have stored up. You know more than you think you do, but you need to start using it actively.
So how do people bridge that gap? How do they start speaking if they feel nervous?
Again, start in a safe, low-pressure way. Maybe practice speaking along with a video lesson that pauses and prompts you for a response. Try shadowing, listening to a native speaker and immediately repeating what they say, mimicking their rhythm and intonation.
Kind of training the mouth muscles and the brain connection.
Exactly. Then, when a real-life opportunity comes up, a coworker asks, hey, how was your weekend? Or a friend asks about your plans, you'll feel that tiny bit more prepared, more confident, because you've already been flexing those conversational muscles in private.
It lowers the barrier to entry.
It does. And the crucial thing, connecting back to planning, is consistency. Active, consistent speaking is the catalyst for fluency. We strongly, strongly recommend committing to speaking English in some kind of conversation setting at least once a week.
Setting a regular time.
Yes. Join a conversation club, find a language exchange partner online, schedule a weekly call. Having that tangible deadline, that regular appointment, encourages you to actually do it. It pushes you beyond passive learning into active use.
It's like exercise you won't get fit just reading about running. You have to actually run.
Perfect analogy. You can't learn to swim by just reading the manual. You have to get in the water.
Mm.
Don't wait for good enough or perfect. Start speaking now, however imperfectly, and fluency will gradually follow.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful set of insights on both what to say and how to learn effectively. Hashtag outro. Well, that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. You've just gained, I hope, an incredible amount of insight into having truly great natural English conversations.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. We looked at those traditional grammar rules like whom or ending with prepositions that you can often confidently bend or break to sound more natural.
Right, understanding why native speakers talk the way they do. And we armed you with a whole toolkit of essential practical questions and answers for almost any situation. Greetings, plans, hobbies, home, work.
The real-world stuff. Plus, we identified those key time wasters in the learning process itself, learning without a plan, memorizing instead of learning, perfectionism, not taking notes, and waiting too long to speak.
And crucially, we talked about the solutions, the strategies to learn more effectively and efficiently.
So you should now really understand the value of moving beyond that rigid prescriptive grammar, embracing how English is actually used, and actively engaging with the language in meaningful context. It's about empowering you.
Hopefully you're feeling more confident, more ready to approach English speaking in a new way.
That's the goal. Now, here's a thought to carry with you as you leave this deep dive.
The takeaway challenge?
Kind of. How will you apply this? What's one specific rule we talked about that you're now ready to maybe consciously break this week in your own English speech?
Or maybe one new phrase from our list. Maybe a greeting or a question about hobbies that you'll intentionally try out in a real conversation. Take that small step.
And this brings us back to that important question. Are you perhaps a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to your English? Can you start to practice forgiving yourself when you make mistakes?
Just seeing them as part of the process, learning and moving on, instead of letting them stop you.
Exactly. That ability to embrace imperfection, to learn from it, and just keep speaking that is truly essential for developing clear, confident communication.
So what does all this mean for your personal English journey? Our hope is that you take these nuggets of knowledge, these insights, these practical tools.
Practice them consistently. Actively apply them in your daily life.
And just watch as your conversational English starts to flourish, as you become a more confident, more natural, and ultimately a more authentic speaker of the language.
We know you can do it.
Absolutely. And if you found this deep dive valuable today, if you learned something useful,
we'd love it if you could give us a quick thumbs up or a like wherever you're listening.
yeah, and maybe share it with a friend or colleague who could also benefit from these insights. And of course, hit that subscribe or follow button so you don't miss our next exploration into fascinating topics.
We really enjoy digging into this stuff and bringing these insights to you.
We certainly do. Thanks so much for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.